Oh, Dragon's Dogma 2 posted another trailer.
A world touched by magic, a symphony of myth and reality, an everlasting saga of hearts set ablaze. Lend me a moment, and I'll tell you a
Ian
story
McShay.
of a fantastical realm.
What a voice, man.
For untold eons, a dragon has plagued the world. Its ominous shadow looms over the lands, a dreadful creature of chaos and awe, with tales of its cruelty echoing far and wide. No mortal would dare to dream of challenging the dragon in single combat, yet
Foreshadowing.
there is one who must. In a legendary tale doomed to repeat across the ages, the dragon chooses a worthy champion from each generation, wrenching the beating heart from their chest and forging a being known as the Arisen. This hero, marked by fate and burdened by their lost humanity, must rise from the trappings of ordinary life and answer the call to take up arms in search of the dragon who stole their heart.
But not in a romantic way. How are you guys feeling about Dragon's Dogma at this point? How are you feeling? Because I've seen sort of a mixture of some hype. A little bit of hype going on. I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna call it like I see it. Other people I've seen are very hesitant, specifically over performance concerns and the uncapped frame rate on console and stuff. So it's been interesting to see the spread, because it seems like a game of extremes. You're either super hyped and you're like, I cannot wait, or you're kind of just like, I don't really get it. Watching Asmund made me pre-order. Oh, is Asmund pretty stoked on it? Looks really fun. I think like you do, that'll fly under the radar till word of mouth accelerates it. Yeah, I mean, my stance for months has just been that I think initially it appeals to more of a niche group, because it's always come off to me as more of it's probably a game with a high barrier to entry. And I was talking to my buddy Caleb about it, because he played the original game way back when, and it had a lot of quirks. Like, it had a lot of things that you would either love or that would absolutely drive you crazy. And it seems like they're doing similar things with this. Like, this isn't a game that's been built to try and cater to or basically make it more accessible. Their goal is, I don't think, to target the masses in your normal like AAA, quadruple A way, where they just dumb the game down to the point where it's not unique anymore. Rather, I think this is actually going to appeal, honestly, probably to like an Elden Ring crowd. I've started to get that vibe the more I've seen videos of like them exploring the world, the designers talking about how open-ended they want everything. They don't want to guide the player very much at all. They've talked about how there's going to be quests and missions and things that you just might not ever find. The Sphinx is a great example. I wonder if they show clips of the Sphinx. But the Sphinx is in the game, and it's like, they've been very clear. There's a lot of players, maybe even most players, will never find the Sphinx and will never get to see it in the game because it's that well hidden, and they're not going to cater to you in it. Like, it's just not the goal. Also, just so everybody is aware, for some reason when I booted up the computer today, the screen has been tearing. That's not in the video. I don't see it here, but I see it on stream. So if you see screen tearing in some of these shots, that is not in the trailer. The frame drops and stutters are in the trailer, but the screen tearing is not, just to be very clear. But I think it's probably a game that initially very niche, and then I think it's just going to pop off probably once some clips of like ogre fights, or maybe you're fighting like a big ass dragon or griffin or something. Those clips I think are what could make it go viral. And you'll get a lot of people that are very curious and are like, maybe I'll try that. But I don't think that this game is going to appeal the same way. But I think like the way one of the lessons of Elden Ring and then the next year with Baldur's Gate 3, I think the lesson recently has been that gamers are a lot more capable than big developers and publishers give them credit for. Gamers are perfectly fine playing a game that's difficult, playing a game that doesn't hold your hand. If anything, they seem to like it more. They don't like being treated like toddlers. And I think it's unfortunate that so often we get games that, I don't know, they just coddle you. It's like the devs think that you're a child still, and they have to hold your hand every single step of the way. It's why, like, I know Ubisoft gets a bunch of crap for it as well, because they have, you know, just a ton of hand holding in a lot of their games. But they've also, in the last handful of Assassin's Creed games, for example, instituted the adventure mode versus, I think it's adventure mode or explorer mode, something like that, versus traditional mode, which is basically like it changes how it instructs you to complete quests and objectives. So if you have it on the adventure mode, it will tell you, okay, go to the shop, maybe on the left side. I spotted something funny here that I'm going to show you in a second, but go to the shop next to the pyramid on the southeast side by the tall trees. And you can take that instruction and go and find the location if you want. Or if you switch it to the regular, like traditional mode, it'll just put an objective marker on your map and you just go and do that. So I can appreciate that because they're kind of doing both things at the same time. I appreciate it when a developer fully leans one way or the other. Like if you're going to have a mini map, if you're going to have objective markers placed on the map, own it, double down on it, design the whole game around that. I think it'll end up being better than when you try to do both things at the same time. And one of the things I appreciated about like Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3, and what I'm hopeful I enjoy about Dragon's Dogma 2 is that these games don't seem to hold your hand, and they're designed around not holding your hand, which I think is really cool to see. But the omnipresent thing that is just a constant reminder with Dragon's Dogma 2 is the performance. We've already talked, I mean, we brought it up 1,000 times. The concerns over frame drops, it's uncapped, targeting, in the words of the director, it is translated, but in the words of the director, about 30 frames.
Isa Aldelnor is now a member.
Thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate you. They're targeting about 30. And like, you remember people were losing their minds when they said that Starfield was going to like be locked at 30. People are like, that's unacceptable. And now with this game, they're saying on console, they're targeting about 30, and it's uncapped, meaning sometimes it's more, but also that's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's less, and that's worrisome. 30 FPS on PC too? No, they have not said that it's 30 FPS on PC. I saw some people saying that, and I think it was because there was like a journalist or somebody that played it, and I'm pretty sure what happened is that they had VSync locked. And you know how sometimes you have VSync turned on in a game and it like you alt tab to a different app that refreshes at 30 frames, and then you alt tab back to the game, but the game still, like the VSync is locking to the other app's refresh rate for how often it refreshes its display or GUI. And so then the game only renders at 30 frames, even though it's capable of doing much more. I think that's what happened, because I do remember seeing like one journalist or YouTuber or something talking about a preview thing that they did, and it was 30 FPS, even though they were playing through a PC. But my understanding is that was a fluke. That was not an actual thing. They're pushing, you can do whatever your machine's capable of on PC, is my understanding. But on console, they are targeting about 30 FPS, which I mean, if one of you guys could do a quick Google, I can't think of another time a developer has ever said they're targeting about any frame rate. Like that's weird. Maybe with 60, they're like, yeah, we're aiming for 60. We're shooting for 60, might be lower sometimes, but yeah, we're going for 60. But like uncapped, aiming for 30, that's weird. It's a little weird. The reason I say that there's a constant reminder of performance issues in Dragon's Dogma 2 is because normally, again, during these trailers, during these showcases and things, developers want to show you the best footage they possibly can for the game. Makes sense. They don't want it to look worse than it actually is, or they don't want you to get a negative impression. And so usually when you still see issues in trailers that they're putting out very close to launch, at this point we're what? 4 days, I think, away from launch. In that case, like, we're 4 days out from launch. This trailer definitely shows the best of the best of the footage they have to offer. I think this, do they show like the PlayStation splash screen or something? I don't think so. So I don't know if this is on PC or PS5, but either way, you would think that they were making this look the best it can. I want you to, though, look here. They're going to cut off of it the moment this artifact starts to pop up, okay? They're going to cut the shot just as you might be able to start spotting it, okay? I'm cursed with this. I see this stuff all the time. But watch what happens up here. Ignore the screen tearing, that's from the capture card. Do you see some, like a ghostly apparition starting to form here? As we go forward. As I'm zoomed in, it might be kind of hard to see. I'm actually making it more difficult. What's happening is that there is an NPC that's going to start fading in here. See that? So she's fading in as the character's walking forward, and then they cut it and fade to black right as you would start to see it. So is this like immediately dismissive? Does this make the game bad? No. But this is why, like, you have to be very attentive in trailers, because of course they don't want to focus on that shot. But my concern is that if this is the best shot they could get and there's still characters popping in the city, what does the worst shot of the city look like? You know, like that's bad. That's concerning. So like, and people are always like, well, we're just nitpicking. It is absolutely nitpicking. I want to be very clear. Absolutely. But it's because we've been burnt by so many games with bad performance. And of course, developers don't want to tell you their game is going to run poorly. So they'll try to kind of obfuscate and hide around it. But if you acknowledge and you see a bunch of smoke, usually there's a fire indicating that maybe performance isn't going to be that good. And when you pair it with the other red flags of like the console performance being really iffy, the fact that there's constant frame drops in these trailers, especially in shots around cities for some reason, that starts to get concerning. And it's the same thing we noticed with Callisto Protocol. Those of you guys who were watching the streams and hanging out with me during the marketing campaign of the Callisto Protocol, which I actually have the collector's edition statue right there. That thing's now worth like $5. Like nobody wants that statue. The Elden Ring one is super valuable. Same with like Cyberpunk and The Last of Us Part 2. But that Callisto Protocol, man, that one, nobody wants it. Anyway, but with that, there were all sorts of issues with frame drops, with stuttering and stuff that we saw in the trailers for Callisto Protocol. And we were like, why are we seeing all of this stuff when this is the best that they can put forward? And it's because it was the best they could put forward, and the game actually had a lot of problems, you know? One of the biggest frustrations, and something that my buddy Caleb was telling me, is that there in the original game was a lot of these sort of like randomized encounters when you're exploring the world, kind of like in, you know, old school Pokemon games where you run through the grass and then a fight just occurs. Similar to that, when you're traveling between destinations, you're going to just run into constant fights. And I think he said in the original game it was wolves were the big thing, I think is what he said. Just tons of wolves that you had to fight as you worked your way between locations. And it seems like something similar is going to go on in this game. They've talked a little bit about it, where they don't want you really fast traveling if you can help it. They want you to like explore at your own pace. My only concern is that like they've disclosed pretty much all of the monsters and stuff that are going to be in the game. And it's not like, it's not a bad list or anything. Yeah, monsters on the official website. It's not a bad list, but I'm also wondering like if it gets old, you know? Like I honestly just don't know. Because I would assume like the Golem is probably a boss fight. The Chimera is probably a boss fight. Griffin's boss fight. Goblins, hobgoblins kind of blend together. Maybe just harder goblins. Wolves, harpies, saurians. These are all probably just dynamic encounters that you stumble on while traveling in the world. And I don't know how different they are, you know? So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Rattlers, ooh. Whites, those look badass. Minotaur, the clips they've shown of the Minotaurs are awesome. The Talos, the bronze giant from the legends rising from the sea. Its massive frame can walk over valleys with ease, just like a divine punishment. It mercilessly brings chaos to the land. Ooh, baby. I'm interested in how varied it is. But again, we shall see. All told, though, I think it looks badass. so much of this looks badass, but whenever you see a big game that is very open, it does make you just wonder how varied it's going to be, you know? But I mean, then again, you don't always need a crazy amount of variability so long as the core mechanics are fun. That's kind of the ultimate deciding factor. Because Monster Hunter, very transparently, is extremely repetitive. And I love that game. I don't know how many hundreds of hours I put into Monster Hunter World, but many. And it's because I love the core mechanics of it. And one of the promising things with Dragon's Dogma 2 is that there's so many different play styles. I don't know, have they mentioned if there's a new game plus or something? Maybe that's a thing that potentially adds gameplay time and stuff too. But it seems like there's going to be many encounters, many fights, and even if they're a little repetitive, as long as the core mechanics are fun, that's all you really need. Look at that. Uh-oh, run away. Yeah, I wouldn't mess with that. I wouldn't mess with that guy. I'm glad they're hyping up the exploration. Hopefully some really cool hidden stuff aside from the Sphinx. Yeah, I mean, my hope is that if they've talked about the Sphinx and that's hidden, what is hidden that they have not talked about? But all this with Dragon's Dogma 2, it's just, I think the game has a ton of potential to really impress a lot of people, surprise a lot of people. And while I don't think it finds initial like overwhelming success, I do think it has a slow burn, and word of mouth is going to do a lot. The fact that it doesn't have co-op or anything and it's just a single player game maybe slows the word of mouth travel a little bit, because with games like Elden Ring, at least for me, I remember when that game came out, getting my friends on to play boss fights with me. Like that was a really cool thing to be able to do together. And this won't have that same thing. So it's going to be a little bit different, but I still think the word of mouth carries it a long way. So yeah. Keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on it.